You are live. Well, good evening, all. Welcome to the Tuesday night processing group. Once again, I think, started in Philippians now. I titled this one "The Summer of Love Continued." So, because I think Tom, you were talking about the epistle to the Philippians as a love letter. And a little bit of glancing through that I did, you're exactly right. That's what I saw in the whole thing. Well, you want to dive right in? Anybody got anything pressing, or anybody want to go first? I'm prepared if you're not.
Get us started.
Yeah, I'm happy to relax a little bit.
Okay. Well, I'm going to share what jumped off the page at me. Hang on.
Hey, Martin.
Good evening. How is everyone?
Good evening.
So, Tom, you were talking about was Paul and who else? Timothy?
Silas.
Silas?
Oh, excuse me. No, that was the side trip we took to Acts 16. It is Paul and Timothy. Sorry.
So they were the tremendous persecution and suffering. Well, they were first on house arrest, so it wasn't so bad. But after they cast out the demon and pissed everybody off, because now there went their money they were making out the window. They did them. They threw them in the inner dungeon or whatever you called it. Anyway, the first thing that hit me was John taught us that the shit hits the fan when you're in the midst of it. Your world is upside down. Yeah. What you really believe comes out. So that's what I focused in. That's what the Lord had me notice about Paul and Timothy. His relationship with the Lord trumped everything, even suffering. His behavior was to love regardless of his own circumstance, suffering, injustice, wrongfully accused, whipped, beaten, clubbed, you had mentioned. So that was the first thing that hit me, was his love for the Lord, his relationship with God trumped everything. And then, of course, then there was a great earthquake. I said, God uses Mother Nature to set them free. Just like he rolled the stone away for Jesus, he used an earthquake. Actually, I don't know where I read it. It says that the angels of the Lord, but there was an earthquake, and the stone from Jesus's tomb was way out in the field somewhere. It didn't just roll away. It flew somewhere. So once again, God uses Mother Nature to make stuff happen. God shows up. Some get saved and baptized. Some are scared shitless and just wanting to get rid of them and it to all just go away. Some were drawn to God, some ran from God. When you were talking about I don't know if that was when you're in Acts or not. So then you went to Philippians chapter 1, verse 8. You focused in on verse 8 and 9. And verse 8 was, how greatly I long for you all with the affection of Jesus Christ. And the Lord had that jump off at me, the affection of Jesus Christ. What is that? And the first person I thought of that, other than Paul as being the example, was John Glenn. He lived with the affection of Jesus Christ. He made a comment one time that he was tired of people taking away his church. So he ended up making his own out at Freedom Ranch. And his love for all of us, he was driven.
Mm-hmm.
He was motivated. It was his meaning and purpose. That was his mission while he was here. And it was obvious. So I wrote down, Paul knew who he was and his meaning and purpose. How do you get that? It's a result of hanging out with divine love. So look at the years, all the way from when he got knocked off his horse on the road to Damascus. And that was like 12 o'clock noon during the day. The sun's out bright and shiny, but then he got blinded by a great light. So that's pretty impressive right there. So then I went to Proverbs. Lord led me to Proverbs. It's 37, verse 4. Delight yourself also in the Lord, and he shall give you the desires of your heart. And actually, verse 3 was trust in the Lord and do good, dwell in the land and feed on his faithfulness. So that's what hanging out with divine love does. We're feeding on his faithfulness. It's not what we're doing for him. We're focused on what he has done, is doing, will continue to do for us. And so then the Lord said to me, when we realize our oneness with him, his desires become our desires.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what that verse means. Because you're hanging out with divine love, you're creator and sustainer of the universe, and you're getting to know him and his perfect will. And you become just like him. So then he took me deeper, and I looked up the definition of delight. If you delight yourself in the Lord, what does that mean? So it's a feeling of great pleasure, satisfaction, or happiness, to be soft or tender. I Googled it. It said, I think lovers of God are those who are soft and tender towards him, always teachable, always pliable in his hands. I thought that was really good because that's defining it pretty well. Verse 9, you had talked about, pull it up, because you had mentioned knowledge and discernment. Sorry, I meant to have this already ready. I pray that your love may abound still more and more in knowledge and all discernment. And the Lord told me, not knowledge so you can shine. It's not to get all puffed up with knowledge and discernment, and so that you can shine and you're the great super Christian. It's knowledge of who he is and who he made us to be.
Mhm.
In all discernment is being able to cut through the surface issues and see the core motives. And it's like seeing like he sees, even our own motives. That all discernment is being able to see motives. You cut through all the everything and get right down to the core issue, the core motive. That we may approve of the things that are excellent. What's excellent? The pure motives and the Christ in you. And when we apply that to ourselves, then we can feel good about ourselves. It gives us an enhanced sense of worth. See it? When your motive is pure, you know that you were led by the Spirit to do what you did, and there was no flesh, no self in it. Gives you an enhanced sense of worth as a person. That you may be sincere and without offense. So then he had me look up definition of sincere. What's that mean? Sincere, free from pretense or deceit, proceeding from genuine feelings of a person saying what they genuinely feel or believe, not dishonest or hypocritical, wholehearted. Sincere stresses absence of hypocrisy, feigning, or any falsifying embellishment or exaggeration. A sincere apology. Wholehearted suggests sincerity and earnest devotion without reservation or misgiving. And then I got one more I found. It said, serenity is the virtue. Excuse me. Serenity is the virtue of one who communicates and acts in accordance with the entirety of their feelings, beliefs, thoughts, and desires in a manner that is honest and genuine. So, in just the definition of two words there, it's a whole deeper meaning to what he was saying in just those two verses.
Mm-hmm.
So, and then of course, how do we do that? How does the only way to do it is hanging out with divine love. It's you know, we're still coming to believe, and the more that the Lord grows us up in our new identity and in the knowledge and discernment, you know, of who he is and who he's made us to be, the closer that we get and the tighter the relationship. Oh, hang on, I got Frankie.
Welcome.
So I want to say that it all stems from the relationship. So in Paul's love letter, you can see his heart.
Mm-hmm.
And I couldn't help but think of John Glenn. I mean, he did the same thing. You know, it's like he wasn't up there he didn't want any focus on himself. There was no self in it. It was always loving and caring about us and trying to train us, equip us, the saints, for the work of the ministry. He lived his whole life for that. He devoted his whole life for that, just like Paul. Oh, that's what I.
Who's up?
That's better. That'll work better. I actually ended up focusing in on one verse, and the whole first chapter intrigued me. That it got me thinking about, what do I do? How do I come across to people? Am I loving them? Because this was obviously from his heart. And of course, the proof of that is, like Tom pointed out, his letters always started out in this positive mode. Servants of Christ, to all the saints, overseers, grace and peace to you from God our Father and the Lord Jesus Christ. And I think it gives us a great example of how not just how to write something or how to say something. Talk's cheap. I mean, I can practice and say the same thing over and over and over, and it's always the thing that I say. But if there's no heart behind it, it's just words. And in my living, in the beginning, you believed everybody. And you couldn't understand how your supervisors saw right through it. But the longer you were in it, the quicker you, not to misuse my initials, but the quicker you got the BS. You figured it out. But Paul was real. When they got letters, we talk about how God gets a kick out of his creation, out of what he did and what we do for him and our worship and all these things. And I'm constantly thrilled at what he's done to me, what I see him doing to people that I deal with. And so when I 9 through 11, it was actually 3 verses. And this is my prayer, that your love may abound more and more. And this is out of the NIV, but more and more, the knowledge and depth of insight, so that you may be able to discern what is best and may be pure and blameless until the day of Christ, filled with the fruit of righteousness that comes through Jesus Christ, to the glory and praise of God. So since Sunday, I've kind of been taking the trip in. What am I doing? And people have come to mind that I think of on occasions, and I've recognized, some negativity and some praise, and realize that, some of them I see that God's narrowing me in to be on the correct path. But it's also helping me last night at Men's Fellowship. It's helping me to recognize guiding people, because Paul was a master at it. And just in these short 2 days, the rest of Sunday and yesterday, it was neat to see what God did last night. Not just in me, but in the other guys. But certainly, I want to tweak myself and get better, but I can't do it. Now, he's already done it, and I accept that, and I recognize that, but I have to step out in faith, and even that he has to give to me. We talked about that last night, about what God gives us, and I swear there's a verse somewhere that says that he gives us the want to have faith. I don't know where it is. I haven't read it yet, but Ephesians 2:8-9 says he gives us the faith, so he gives us the want to, because in and of himself, he says there's nothing that I have or do that's good. So even the want to, I have no doubt he gives to us. And Paul takes this, and the way he writes this and the way he rolls through this, when Tom, on Sunday, when you went through the historical thing and started telling about the family and how did it go, that he would believe and his house, the effect that it had was just amazing. And I get it, because I went over to my sister's house the other day, we are each other's last remaining sibling. And really anymore, every time we get together, we end up talking about Christ. And she goes to the church, and of course I go to Freedom Ranch. And we get to talking about this, and it is so fabulous. There's never any argument, because he is the truth. When we're talking about him, you can't go wrong. And we don't let ourselves go out on tangents and all that. But anyhow, that's what happened to me. I ended up with those 3 verses because I just started reading back through this, and those hit me personal. Wow, what am I doing about, this person, this guy, this girl, this, my wife, myself. When I look in the mirror, what is my self-talk? And so I took it personal, and then listening to the historical stuff that you found, I love that. Honestly, just so you know, I love that. And I always loved history, and for you to come up with this stuff and recognize who did what and how they did it and how it affected their families and what the background was, what the backdrop was, religiously or politically, the date, it just is truly, truly interesting, and stuff that we wouldn't normally hear. And I thank you for it. But anyhow, that's what I mean.
Yeah, you're welcome. I've just, I'm just going to speak for a minute, but yeah, to me, I always worry about getting too involved into the history side of it because I think it comes off as kind of nerdy to some people, maybe because they're not as interested in these arguments. But I got to try to put myself in their place. I got to try to be where they were, try to feel what they were feeling, and all of that. But one thing that came up as you were talking, Bill, I just wanted to remind everyone that the homework assignment of continuing to relax still goes. Okay. So in the midst of all this, we got to remember to relax, in his love and let him do it, Yeah. That's all I want to say about that. You guys want me to go on, or you guys gonna be ready?
You guys are too talkative.
Just to maybe place a little more emphasis, even what Jim was emphasizing in that part, in verse 8, where he says, "For God is my witness, how I long for you all with the affection of Christ Jesus." That word affection in the Greek is often translated bowels, the most inward parts. And it denotes figuratively pity or sympathy. And I think that going back to where Paul first met the Philippians, Tom, was a good reminder to me of the suffering that he went through, even in just that one circumstance.
Mm-hmm.
I believe that can be why he is addressing this letter full of hope and promise to the Philippians, because they're probably enduring a lot of that during the time that he's writing this, and that he's aware of it with the messengers that come back and forth to visit him in Rome. And that verse 8, "For God is my witness, how I long for you. I deeply desire you. I am affectionate toward you as Christ is affectionate toward you." I think is maybe another way of saying that same thing that Paul's trying to get to them. Look, I'm writing this out of my love and affection for you it could only be superseded by Christ himself. I'm doing it with the same affection. I'm doing it with the same sincerity and sympathy that Christ has for you. And then he goes on throughout the letter. I'm sure you'll point out, Tom, as we move on in this, in giving them hope in what Christ has done for them, and that what he will do for them. So that I just wanted to kind of re-emphasize what Jim was saying there, that I think Paul's love for these folks was tremendous, and he understood the suffering and the persecution that they were under at that time, and that led him to write this letter in this form to them.
Are you finished, Ron? Sorry, am I jumping in?
Yes, yeah, no, go ahead. I just wanted to bring that in while it was fresh on my mind, and maybe fresh on yours, as to what he said to begin with.
I love the context prior to going into the chapter. I mean, to hear that, the persecution had already started to the point where he'd been convicted and put under house arrest for 2 years. I don't know if they had probation officers back in the day, or he was on work release or anything like that. But I had a guy that worked for me or with me, and he was on house arrest for 6 years. And after about 8 months, there was nothing left to do in the house. You know, he'd fixed everything. He'd done the honey-do list and all that. And he was losing his mind, absolutely losing his mind. I mean, can we work late? You know, you have to be here. You know, it was great because we were laying tile, and but it puts it into perspective to see where Paul's coming from. Yeah, we've read Romans 7 where he's reading from he's speaking from a prison cell, but then he's told where to go without any idea of where he's going to stay. And the Lord's taken care of it with a woman who's just got baptized. Then her whole family got baptized. And she says, "Oh, you can stay with me." Now, this guy's a convict, you know, and an ex-Christian killer from back in the day, Saul of Tarsus. But then, like Jim was saying, you go into it, and he goes into this marketplace and casts out a demon and basically has the tar beaten out of him because he's stolen their income. You know, the boldness of this guy was unbelievable, you know. And then when he starts writing the letter to the Philippians, the verse that jumped off me was, being confident in this very thing, that he which has begun a good work in you will perform it until the day of Jesus Christ.
Mm-hmm.
So then I read it in the Message, and let me see where it is. There's never been the slightest doubt in my mind that the God who started this great work in you would keep at it and bring it to a flourishing finish on the very day Christ Jesus appears. So you painted this picture of Paul's faith despite the circumstances, and how God was orchestrating the whole thing, with even the beating from the people in the marketplace. But he knew who he was. Goes back to what Jim was saying. 2 years of house arrest. I bet his prayer life was right up there, you know. And it probably started, you know, here I am, you know, I'm sold out for you, and I'm stuck in this, you know, we're not talking a mansion, we're talking a mud hut, you know what I mean? But then he walks into a marketplace and has discernment to spot a demon when he sees one, casts it out like it's nothing, knowing who he is, the authority that he's been given. And then he writes that verse, giving away the hope that people need in you know, I mean, paint yourself in this picture. You know, that when life sucks, you just need a glimmer of hope. You know, just see me, let me see the light at the end of the tunnel. Well, here he is giving it to us, saying, don't worry about the circumstances. I'm confident. And you know, he's already painted the picture. You know what I've been through. I'm confident that God's going to finish what he started. So there's the faith, there's the hope, and now he's going to tell them how to love. And it's beautiful, man. It's beautiful because it's real. You know, this guy. Well, then you go on to, you know, you were talking about how when they found out he was a Roman, they had to let him go quietly because, like you said, if they didn't do their job, people were fired. Weren't fired, they were killed. And they didn't, you know, they didn't kill with a bullet to the head. They tortured. You know, they'll do it slowly to make a point. You know, and they probably got brownie points for making it last longer. You know, with the gold standard being crucifixion. So it was good. I mean, I never seen all that. You know, and like Bill was saying, making it personal. You know, because you don't see the light at the end of the tunnel. You know, you need proof. You need to hear God's voice. You need to hear that divine love tell you in the thick of it that you're okay. That's what I got out of it. In the international version, he starts off with, "I am convinced of this." And that the one who began a good action among you will bring it to completion by the day of the Messiah Jesus. Convinced, no doubt whatsoever, because of his relationship. It's beautiful, beautiful.
You know, you just said something, and it hit me that there are so many times in a day that, and I suppose I choose to not even accept that there's a light at the end of the tunnel. And I go negative. And then he brings me around. He does it. He brings me back into the light. This light that makes no sense that it even exists for me. And he allows me to again believe that he has made something good out of something bad. That's what he did with Paul. That's what he did with each of us.
Mm-hmm.
And we are perfectly able. Man, that's just amazing. And that's the kind of stuff, when I hear what he says to them in the beginning of each of these books, I recognize what, first off, I should be saying to the man in the mirror, what I should be saying to my wife, what I should be saying to my children, and then going out past my doors.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's almost a moot point to go out past my doors without saying it to my own family, without saying it to myself. Because what's true of Christ is what's true of me, is what's true of my wife, is what's true of my children, is what's true of my neighbors. Whether each of them believe it or not is not my problem. That's between them and God. But at the leading of the Spirit, for me to know when to say it, what to say, how to say it, whether it's going in with a hug or turning over the tables. Man, talk about leading of the Spirit.
What do you think Paul was saying?
Yeah.
What do you think he was praying for the 2 years that he was on house arrest?
Mm-hmm.
Let this cut pass from me.
Yeah.
Or, okay, because one way is coming from insecurity and the other one's coming from total security.
Yep.
So when he's believing who he is, just like us, when we're believing who we are, we're going to be praying to God, help, how can I love somebody? So I wonder how many times Paul, even on 2 years of house arrest, was praying for God, who do you want me to love today? What do we, in other words, it gets us out of the self-centeredness.
Absolutely.
Follow me?
Yeah.
Because the one way is insecurity. You're not believing who you are and you're insecure. So you're going to be praying for help some way, somehow for yourself rather than security.
Perhaps that's why he wrote that 6th verse. I am confident, because
Experience.
yeah, absolutely. In the trenches.
Right.
If he doesn't show up and save me, I'm done.
But also the experience there is also recognizing that he's not in control anymore at all, ever.
Right.
And then, so if he's there on house arrest, there must be a reason. So that, okay, once again, we've surrendered our will and our life over, and there's no resistance. The flesh isn't bowing up saying, whoa, wait a minute, what about me? See it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And that all comes, what I'm seeing is it all comes with maturity. Because once he brings you, we go from glory to glory. Once you die to whatever it is, that self for whatever it is, he buries it, he raises you up. You never go back here again. That's done and dealt with. We're on another plateau. You've just matured to another level. You don't go back down there. So from glory to glory is growing up, maturity to maturity. And the more that we mature, the more that he reveals himself to us of who he is and who he's made us to be, causing us to see it and believe it. Follow me? Then the less that we're in the flesh. You'll spend more time believing than you do not believing.
Do you guys have any idea what was written first, Philippians or Romans?
I might be able to tell you that.
The only reason I'm asking
date of writing of Philippians was they say they're estimating it as the year 60 AD. Romans 57 to 58 AD. So 2 to 3 years prior, give or take.
Right. I'm just thinking of Romans 7, end of Romans 7, beginning of Romans 8.
Yeah, I see where you're going with that.
And then he goes,
right. And after he got through that, he wrote Philippians.
Right.
Yeah.
Now he's convinced. He's confident. He's convinced.
Yeah.
Right.
And what's interesting as we go through this, we're going to see how much the fantastic work Paul did while he was incarcerated. It's amazing. And even to the point where he says, hey, listen, and you're telling these guys, I know y'all are worried about me. I know you're all concerned for me, but you won't believe the things that are going on here. Even in the jail, it's that's the amazing. It's like he's saying, like, it wouldn't happen if I wasn't here. I mean, so does God's got me here for you? Think it's a bad thing, and I'm not saying it's, that it's wonderful, but in spite of it, God is still doing things. It's going on. It's not getting in the way of the gospel at all. I think that's what's really, really cool. And you guys, the Lord's really telling me that we really need to. We're just scratching the surface at chapter 11. We're going to spend some time, because of you guys are all bringing up some things that we need to, discuss it in further depth, I think, and and let God reveal more than we're already saying. What's cool is these various translations that you guys are using. They're just fortifying the understanding of it. I mean, because you guys have all read from translations, and one thing I'll throw in there is that Ron pointed out that word, the bowels, the deepest, innermost part of his being. The translation I have in mind, which is a New King James, it says tender mercies. And that really rings true to me, that that, it's the tender mercies. It's like, that's where I really started understanding that this was a love letter. It really was a love letter.
It's the heart of God.
Yeah. So it's cool.
I find it intriguing that Paul takes himself out of the picture.
Yeah.
As with everything that God had done with him, I could see myself becoming proud. And that may have been something that he also dealt with. Who knows? He's a human being just like me. But he says, being confident of this, that he who began a good work in you will carry it on to completion until the day of Christ Jesus. He didn't put himself in there.
Mm-hmm.
He didn't even put them in there.
Mm-hmm.
He actually left it open that what he started with you, he will complete.
Right.
So somebody will complete it. So just because we talk to somebody, we don't have to complete it. We don't have to keep up with them. We don't need a list of phone numbers and go checking on people and all this. God knows exactly what he's doing. He doesn't need me. He knows exactly how to get to people. He knows their phone numbers. He knows who to have knock on their door for some stupid, I've got a flat tire, can you help me? And the next thing you know, they've led them to Christ. Boom. I don't know, but God does. I don't need to know. That's the beauty of this.
Mm-hmm.
He is convinced, he's confident that the one who started it will finish it.
Yeah.
Man, God, give us that confidence, please.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
No, he's going to grow us up. He's
Yeah.
the one that, or it's at Hebrews, is it 12? Looking unto Jesus, the author and finisher of our faith.
Yeah.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
So, in
Paul,
other words, none of it is up to us. He didn't leave nothing up to us.
Thank
He's
God.
the one growing us up from the inside out.
Right.
And we can take that to the bank. You can be confident that that's happening.
well, Paul says virtually the same thing later in Philippians chapter 2, where he says, "Wherefore, my beloved, as ye have always obeyed, not as in my presence only, but now much more in my absence, to work out your own salvation with fear and trembling." We went over that once, and
Right.
if you remember, and what
Yep.
what he's saying there is to work out your own salvation amid fear and trembling,
Right.
which alludes to the suffering that the church was going through, and under Nero, and how they were suffering for that. But then he brings in the point that both Martin and Bill were talking about. When he says, "For it is God which worketh in you both to will and to do of his good pleasure." It's God doing that. And what's really caught my attention with this is that prior to him saying this, he talks about how God had highly exalted Christ and given him the name which is above every name, that at the name of Jesus every knee should bow, of the things in heaven and of earth and things under the earth, and every tongue should confess that Jesus Christ is Lord, to the glory of God the Father. That's the victory. That's the end game. That's what's done, and what their hope is to be placed on. And while we're going through all this crap here on earth, we're working out our own salvation, or in other words, another a translation of that word that is translated "work out" is to finish. Finish is meant by this. Finish your work, or finish your salvation amid fear and trembling. in spite of the suffering that you're enduring. Finish your salvation, pointing us back to what Christ has done to finish it for us. So I love the way you bring the history into this, Tom, because I think it so much more opens up, in my mind at least, why he's writing what he's writing, why he's telling them these things that he's already preached to them. They already accepted it, but it's been a couple of years now, 2 or 3 or 4 years since possibly even seen him. Since now that he's in prison in Rome. So I don't know. I really appreciate you bringing in the historical part of this. I think it just adds so much more meaning to what Paul is saying in this letter. But I think they're seeing it too because they've experienced it in him. They've seen how he's acted when he sang praises while he was in that dungeon in their presence. And they've seen by example, they saw what he was doing. And so these words, I think, even mean more to them for that, that they personally experienced that in him. So, I don't know. To me, it just enlightens us.
That's where I'm going with this question, which I have not worked out yet. And that's this issue of, in verse 9, "This I pray that your love may abound yet more and more in knowledge and in judgment." So what is the interconnection? What's the interplay? I said, well, which came first, the love or the knowledge and discernment, I'm feeling that it's an interplay that they build on one another, and that as you guys were talking about, it's experiencing the love that actually gives you the discernment and the knowledge,
Absolutely.
So it's kind of like John said in 1 John, is that yet the two requirements is you have to love, you got to be born of God, and the second requirement is that you have to know God, meaning personal relationship experience. So I want to explore that some more as we go along through this, and it's pretty cool stuff.
I get the feeling this is going to cause everybody to get real, and therefore, it's kind of like an alpha class when you start off with 20, 25 people, and by the time you get to less than 8, there's maybe half a dozen.
Yeah. Well, at least this crowd, we've learned that getting real is a good thing.
Yeah. Look at what Kelly Oldham's writing on the side here in the comments. Spot on. She's talking about taking a trip in like Bill was,
right?
And blind spots. It's all personal, and if you're not taking it personal, maybe take a look at that,
Yeah, it's interesting. In that verse 9, it ends with, in the NIV, it ends with depth of insight. Interesting. That your insight may become more in depth, that you may, catch on to what's going on, or whatever, however you want to say that.
Maybe it's talking about intelligent love, because the knee-jerk reaction is to love everybody, and you and you might be getting hurt by loving them, but when you're looking at yourself, maybe it's because I'm loving that person because I need something from them. So here comes the knowledge.
Right.
You're a raging codependent.
Yeah. The Message Bible says here that you will not only love much, but well. Learn to love appropriately. You need to use your head and test your feelings so that your love is sincere and intelligent. You just said it. Yeah.
Yeah, but it ain't up to us to make that happen because we can't.
Right.
No, but it's to be mindful of what's going on in you. You know, if you're feeling the sting of rejection, then what are you believing? Because you ain't believing the gospel. You know, if you're feeling somebody, you know, to bring it in our perspective, if somebody gets up and the example I was given was if somebody gets up to go to the restroom during group, and you sit there wondering, well, maybe you need to deal with some abandonment issues. You know what I mean? But they're all. It's to be mindful, to be conscious of what's going on. You know, no, not that you can do anything about it, but you can pray about it and give it to him.
That's right.
That's what he's.
You know, realizing where somebody has come from, things that's happened in their lives, affect how things that go on in my life affect how I act and react, and so even that, knowing you learn somebody and you know somebody and you think you know somebody and then you learn some fact about them and go, oh, that's why he or she acts like they do.
Absolutely.
Because they've been through this, that, or the other. Well, I didn't know that, you know.
Right.
And so now you have a little insight into their psyche and what's going on in their head. And God has now given you this little gem to carry with you, to carry with me, and recognize in people things that I wouldn't have known otherwise. And I would have just gone, the hell's wrong with him?
Right.
Why isn't he getting it? You know.
That's the point I was getting at is I don't see anything until he causes me to see it.
Right.
So in other words, I'm not making it happen. If I'm seeing something, it's because he's enabling me to see it. It still goes back to him being in control of my life. You know, like what do you have right now that he didn't first give you? It all goes back, you know, that's what I'm saying. It's because it's a slippery slope. First thing you do is start trying to make that happen, and you're going to pay attention so that maybe you'll recognize something. That's you being in control again.
Yep.
Instead of just living your life, and when he wants you to see something, you're going to see it. He wants you to hear something, you're going to hear it. That's what's happening in my experience.
That's a maturity level, Jim. You're talking about a maturity level that you don't have in the beginning. You know, that's you're resting. You know, that you're resting. That's after you've exhausted every avenue. You know.
Yeah.
Well, we were talking about Paul when he said, "I am convinced." Right?
Right.
So from his past experience, however many years it took.
Sure.
He was convinced.
Sure. Mm-hmm.
So, and then you start at that point, that's where the knowledge and discernment starts coming in.
Right.
And I think that the knowledge and discernment is in the love.
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely.
You're not going to get it outside of the love. I think you got to have the love first.
Right.
Yeah, I agree with you on that, Jim. When I looked up the word knowledge in the Greek, it says full discernment, complete discernment, and it's the love that gives you that. When you find yourself loving somebody else, it's that's given by God because God loved you first. I mean, it all stems from that, and that and just what he says in that. And this I pray that your love may abound. You have more love, you
Right.
more and more, and in knowledge or full discernment, which is what love gives you. When you love somebody else, you go, hey, that worked. I mean, oh yeah, okay. And then your discernment or judgment, you can know by that word is can be translated perception.
There you go. Yep.
So I think that you're right, Jim, and that love comes first, and that what
Absolutely.
it produces in you is uh, more uh, more recognition of what God's doing,
You start
not
seeing
only
like
in you but in somebody else, and the discernment or the perception of what the outcome is.
we start
I don't
seeing
know.
like he sees.
I could probably put that in better words.
Say that again, Jim.
We start seeing like he sees.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Right.
yeah,
Yeah.
good point. Good
Yeah,
point.
I think that perception is a word that really works for me to understand it. And like I think it's kind of like what you're saying, Jim, is we have eyes to see and ears to hear. You know what I mean? It's in other words, it's almost like becomes a part of our senses.
It's because of the oneness. We're becoming one.
Right.
Right.
So we're becoming just like him.
Yeah. I agree.
Yeah, you said a really good word to me yesterday, Jim, when we met in the parking lot. I just reached a point of contentment. Things I'm not getting rattled as much. And that's all got to do with just trial and error, just going through things and trying to work things out on my own. It doesn't work out. When I just don't do anything and let go, it always works out. It's just that it goes right back to just trust God, just trust what I've been told, letting go. That has been true with me for pretty much the last couple months. Just God's been showing me a whole bunch of things, and I don't know if it has anything to do with kind of seeing the end of the road right now, because I don't know what's ahead. But as far as work is concerned, and I'm not focused on having to be the best of the best or trying to go out there and prove myself anymore. It's okay to let go and let someone else do the job that I started. That's different in me. And that's a part of me just relaxing and where I'm at.
Mm-hmm.
But it's been good. It's been real good. Right now there's a lot of fear stuff that I should be fearful about. And I do go in and out. I got some medical stuff coming up. And I started to get freaked out about it in the beginning, but I just said, I got to get it done, and the end result will be what it's going to be. I don't have to worry about. I have to get ahead of it. I guess that's what I'm saying. But it's good stuff. I'm going to go back and look. I did not get a chance to review the sermon on Sunday, but I know where you guys are going with it, and I'm familiar with that chapter. But now I want to go look at it because it was real good. I want to catch it.
Cool.
Well, I'm not a history buff. I love the history. I like to try to put myself there and try to feel what they were feeling and experience what they were experiencing. John was good at that, telling us the context and Um, it really does help you understand and get the full meaning out of each letter, where they're coming from, why they're doing it, what was going on around them at the time. I'll have to work on that.
Well, I think too, in this study, we're probably going to be referring back to the book of Acts some more. And, look at Paul, look at his story, his relationships to Timothy, Silas, the others, that are there for us, and try to get more into that, because really Paul, the Acts is mostly a history, it's just a history. So, I think we'll probably be, I don't know. I'm excited to find out where we're going to go with all this, really am.
I think one thing that helps me with the history part of it, and then reading it and then trying to decipher where Paul is coming from, is to give me a point that I can relate to.
Mhm.
And it's the practical application of this that matters to us today.
Sure.
And so I think no matter what, to me, facing what I've seen here just this year alone, it gives me a sense of hope and assurance that this suffering isn't going to last forever, number one, and that God is in control of all of it. So the practical aspects of that for me, is providing a hope for things that I've gone through and things that I'm going through.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that to me, any way I can get that kind of reassurance is helpful in my everyday life. So it's very practical in that sense to me.
Yep.
Anybody else got anything else?
That was awesome, man.
I think it's going to get deep.
Yeah, I do too. No pressure,
Yeah,
Tom.
I mean, we basically just introduced this whole thing.
Yeah, man.
And even though it's only a few pages, this book, I'll bet you we're going to spend some time there before we're done.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good stuff.
Does that mean you're not going to do a chapter a week?
No. I might do like your brother and do a verse a week.
I consider doing word by word.
A word. Well, I remember studying. Fortunate enough to study with him for it took us about 2 years to go through the book of Hebrews.
Yeah.
And we got down to word by word for a lot of it.
Yep.
Yeah.
Words mean something.
Yep.
Yeah, and that's part of developing the intimacy.
Yeah.
You
And I'll bet if I went back and studied Hebrews again for 2 more years, I'd learn a whole bunch of new stuff that I didn't learn the last time.
Probably, yeah.
Yeah.
I'll go back and read these verses and learn something new.
Correct. Yeah. Actually, I kind of jumped ahead to verses, 8, 9, and 10. But next week we're probably going to go back and read some of those that were before that before we go further. I just wanted to kind of introduce the whole concept of this love letter. And those verses are really good places that you see that pretty quickly.
Well, I think you did a good job on it, Tom. Really good.
Well, I'm enjoying it. It's crazy. I say, so sometimes if I study really hard, I get really frustrated, and I just have to sit back and let it come to me, And the Lord just really showed me, this was a love letter, and that's how we need to approach it. And see what we can learn.
You know, it's interesting you call it a love letter. I've got a book here. I think it was Larry Crabb's last book that he wrote, and it's called 66 Love Letters.
Oh,
And he takes every book of the Bible and said, this is a love letter.
well,
Wow.
it really is. Yeah. Yep.
Did you read Larry? He wrote a book, Larry Crabb, Inside Out. Did you ever read that one, Ron?
I've read and have in my possession every book he wrote.
Oh man, that was one of the best books I read in my life.
Every one that I've read by him is just very, very good.
Yeah. It will. It's one of those books where you read a paragraph and then you have to put it down and go back again. 2 days later. It's all the gospel. The similarities between him and the Alpha series are unbelievable.
Was that Search for Significance? Did he write that?
Yeah.
I just ran across that the other night and a whole stack of stuff. I didn't even know I still had it. And that was a real interesting book to go through. I kept going back and forth. That was some good stuff.
I thought it was Larry Crabb and somebody else.
No.
It's not Larry Crabb?
I think I'd organize these things, wouldn't you?
Robert McGee.
Robert McGee. Yeah, that's
Robert
right.
McGee.
That's the significance.
That's right.
It is a good book, though. It's very good.
That's right. Robert McGee.
I still carry around the lies from Search for Significance in my wallet. I read the Search for Significance and Larry Crabb's book Inside Out at the same time. Correct.
Crabb wrote Inside Out.
Yeah.
And Connecting, Safest Place on Earth. What's this one? This is Effective Biblical Counseling. The Marriage Builder.
Oh man, that was a good one.
That's right.
Yeah. Soul. The Pressure's Off. Soul Talk. Inside Out. The Papa Prayer. Real Church. Finding God. And 66 Love Letters. I think those are all his books. Although I know they're all his books, but I think that's all he wrote. Very good read on every one of them. I know John read them all.
Yeah.
And,
there's so many of them down there in his office.
yeah.
Like a treasure trove.
Yeah. Well, look for those. I think you'll find most of those down there. I don't know if he got them all or not, but I think he's a very good author. Well, was a very good author. His brother was killed here in Colorado Springs in a plane crash. They hit a wind shear as he was coming in to Colorado Springs and went nose first about 40 feet into the ground or so. And but then I think he had, I believe, is a cancer that he had that passed away here a few years ago. I can't remember the exact date, but he was, I think at that time he was in Denver, I think. But very good author, very good writings.
Yeah. Well, I'm in trouble with all that
Why,
stuff.
man?
Because my memory's out the window. I could read it, and who knows what I'm going to remember. So I'm relying on the Lord to, just like Martin and I get to an alpha class or whatever, and you get there, it's like you got nothing, and you just show up.
Nice.
and then the Lord does this great thing.
Yeah, those are the best ones when you're sweating bullets, thinking, "Oh gosh, what am I going to say?"
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I'm starting to depend on that more than I am my own memory to remember something.
Well, that's why I confessed Sunday that I'm lazy. I'm just lazy by nature, and the Lord's spoiling me. Really, I mean,
I use I
He makes
use these books from like Crab and some of these good authors that I'm familiar with as my memory. I go back and read them. Oh yeah, especially if it concerns something I'm involved with at the moment.
Yeah.
yeah.
So it's the Holy Spirit that brings back to our remembrance all things we were taught.
That's right.
So we can depend on Him and not our own memory. We don't depend on ourselves to remember. If something's meant to be said, it'll be said.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
All the books and all the equipping that we've had up till now, it's like the computer has been programmed. It's all the information is in there.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
that's what I'm finding out. The best thing to do is just get out of his way, let him have his way. Bill, you want to take us
Well,
home?
he is the way.
Mm.
You want to
Say,
take us
I
home?
can't get out of his way. He is the way.
Tonight we had Jeep Girl Sandra, Donald Fisher, Nugs 45, Okeechobee, Kelly Odom, Virginia Chilton, Sandy Chilton Glenn, Patrick Zent, Darbod, Kelly Odom, Alexander Shipman, Darbod, Becky Newfield, Richard and Lisa Schwartz, Barbara Kelly, and let me keep going. Reach Community Church, Alpha Ministries. Appreciate y'all being here. Thank you so much for your input. Keep strong in the Lord, sharing His truth, hope, and love. Thank you. God bless you all. Learning about biblical history makes it more relatable.
Yeah.
Cool.
Hmm.
Well, I appreciate that feedback.
Insecurity from early childhood conditioning. Thank you, Kelly. Recognizing insecurity comes beauty from the ashes. Some amazing stuff.
Yeah. Good class. Good class. Martin's going to close us out.
What's he going to say?
Fasten your seatbelts.
Who knows?
Thanks for joining us. See you next time. Goodbye.
That's it.
Well, you're all waiting for the same back channel, weren't you?
We do have fun.
Old habits are hard to break.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. We do have fun.
To get back in the water.
All right.
Everybody have a good night. God bless.
Right all. Yeah, God bless.
Everyone for coming. Lord willing, we'll see you next week.
Yeah.